This is another very interesting episode. What had happened is I was serving with government of Chhattisgarh for 5 years. I had gone on deputation to them, and I was I had finished my almost 5 years, and I was about to come back. My son was in 10th, so he needed a little bit of help. So I took a year off as a study leave, and during that time, this artificial intelligence was just coming up. So it was, I think, first I got introduced to artificial intelligence in 2000, more like 15, I guess. And there's a professor at Stanford called Andrew Ng, and he taught this free course on AI on Coursera. And Coursera at that time was totally free because they were just launching, and most of their courses were free. And I was curious about this AI. And I had a little bit of a free time because after that Chhattisgarh stint, I had taken a 9-month break, and I was on study leave trying to study a bit of a management and trying to pursue a PhD in public service and challenges. In fact, my PhD topic was, this all happened simultaneously. So while I was exploring AI, I was also very curious about AI and sort of chose it as a topic of my PhD. So that was happening. So this gentleman's course on Coursera was, again, I think it was one of those, very transformative events. So I did this course. This was like, I think, 8 to 10 weeks course, 2.5 months. And he gave a lot of exercises which you were supposed to do and, experiment with things. And at the end of the course, and of course it helped because I had this technology background, so I could, I could write code, I could, understand, and I had a strong mathematical background as well. So all those things I could understand. So when I actually did all the assignments, one of the assignments was handwriting recognition. And when I did that, it just blew my mind off because it was just so simple. And the whole AI, I remember when I was in BTech final year, we were again experimenting in some way similar to AI. Those times there was something which had come called genetic algorithms. So they were supposed to be, building blocks for AI. And I was experimenting. So while you had neural nets, there was another branch. So for example, today's AI is basically neural nets. So it is mimicry. It mimics brain functionality. Genetic algorithms was taking a biological route to, this is also biological, but probably that was slightly different. Evolutionary route was what was genetic algorithm. So I had done some work on genetic algorithm in those times, and the results were kind of, okay, and nothing to sing home about. And but when I did this course, what I found was the simplicity of this artificial intelligence and a neural network model was really mind-boggling. You have bunch of parameters, you have 1 or 2 layers, and you have a final outcome. And all you do is connect all nodes of each layer to all other nodes of the next layer. And that's about it. Assign certain weights, and once you get the result right, you assign it you don't do anything. If you don't get it right, you go back, propagate that into your weight adjustment, and that's it. And those who understand mathematics a bit, it's basically a gradient search algorithm where you design a desired, reward function. So the challenge is in 2 things: in designing an intelligent reward function and identifying the right parameters which you want to tune. And that's about it. The whole thing is so mind-bogglingly simple. The whole thing is so simple that it really took me by surprise. I used to think that this is something very esoteric, you won't understand. But I was completely swept away when I saw it's just a gradient search algorithm. That's about it. And then you have, variations on those, how do you not get stuck at local maxima and local minima, and how do you avoid, how do you do fast learning, slow, all that is there. But fundamentally, it's about designing a good reward function and developing good set of features and finding out a mechanism to give the feedback to the rest of the system. And that is when I got completely sold onto AI. And of course, from my BTech days till today, there has been a massive growth in terms of compute power. So what possibly my whole IIT Computer Center compute power was, probably today it can be compressed in one laptop or a mobile or a tablet even. So with that kind of compute power available, you and the simplicity of the algorithm, there is virtually nothing which you cannot do using AI. And that's when I decided that this is something I really want to explore deeply. I want to understand. And then I started reading and understanding, and then and as I said, I was on a sabbatical, so I had started exploring deep into this area. The more I learned, the more fascinating it became. And so when I went back to the regular job, I was posted as Commissioner of E-Governance. And I saw there is, of course, Tamil Nadu has been a leader in governance. No doubt on that. Continuously, if you look at the overall public affairs index and governance indices of the ranking which all across India, you'll see Tamil Nadu consistently on the top because the administration works beautifully well there. So while there were a lot of other things going on in e-governance, of course, one of them is delivering public service to people through online mode, etc. We had about 200 odd services. We consistently serve about 1 crore citizens every year. I started looking at AI. The problem with AI is that in governments, AI is a deep technological subject, of course. And the capacity in government is relatively low, and some cases it's very acutely low. And while government can be a great consumer of AI or any of those emerging technologies which are called fourth industrial revolution technologies, whether it is IoT, AI, blockchain, or even drones or augmented reality, virtual reality, it's actually very amazing what you can do with these. AR, I just saw somewhere that in Japan, they are using augmented reality or virtual reality to train students how to escape flooding. Because you can't really create a flooded environment for students. You can't put them through that risk. So I thought that was a great use case where you can use these technologies to train people about disaster. So all these technologies, the 4 IR technologies, including AI, they have huge benefits for the governance. They have huge benefits for the society. What is lacking is the government does not have the technical capacity to understand these technologies. And of course, these technologies also come with a lot of downsides, which I will, maybe in the due course, I'll share that. So what you need, if you want to use these technologies, there's a beautiful book there's a book called History of Tinelveli, and it was written in 1860s by one of the Christian missionaries, Bishop Caldwell, who was going around and so he writes about Tinelveli, and one of the things he wrote in that book, which kind of stands out for me always, he used to say that the kings in that area, Madurai, they would import a lot of horses from those times, from Arab countries and Persia. And those horses will be fattened up, they'll be fed for 2 months because that's a long sea journey. And so they will send, whatever horses were sent, half of them will die on the way and half will land here. And these guys will use those horses in war, in all the other matters of the administration. And then after 2 years, or almost the same year, they developed, these horses used to develop these disease in their feet, and they will get infected and they will die. And as a result, every year the horses had to be imported fresh. And one of the very revealing things which he says is that these guys who were the sellers of the horses will sell the horses, but they did not sell that technology to put that horseshoe on the horses. If the horses came with the horseshoe, they would probably outlast. I mean, they'll not die within a year. They'll be there for 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, 15 years even. But those traders will deliberately not sell that technology, and they'll keep selling the horses. And huge amount of gold actually used to get spent by the king in importing those horses. And that's same thing for all these emerging technologies. If you want to use these brilliant horses, you should have people who know these technologies, who can ride those horses. So this is what is lacking in government. So if you want to use AI, you want to use blockchain, you want to use IoT, you want to use drones, ARs and VRs, you need to develop an in-house capacity to understand these technologies, and you should understand them better than the potential vendors who are going to come and interact with you and try to sell you a lot of fancy stuff. So you should be able to tell the real stuff from the chaff and say that this suits me, this doesn't suit me. This is the right price, this is not the right price, because governments do not have infinite amount of money. Most of the governments are actually, they will have competing demand for funds. And so you have to be very, very economical, you have to be very judicious, and you don't get carried away by fancy sellers' ideas. So this is what was the challenge. So when I took over this e-governance as Commissioner of e-governance, I started, this was the first task I wanted to do, was that I understood AI a bit, but I needed a good set of people who would understand it much better. So I reached out to Government of India, they supported. In fact, there's a small team in every state which Government of India supports. I said, you reduce the size of that team, but give me more salary. And that time the CEO NEGD was there. He's now Chief Secretary Meghalaya, and so was Mr. Rao, and he was very kind. He agreed to my request, and he gave me he gave me a higher salary higher salary ceiling, so that I can hire better people. So that's how it started. Then of course I also tied up with the academic institutions, because Tamil Nadu, again, one of the leading states in terms of academic institutions, so tied up with IIT Madras, Anna University, etc., IIM Trichy and all these places, saying that I need good quality people who can actually help lead some of these initiatives which I am having on AI, on blockchain. So kindly help me get good quality of people. Team is essentially all that matters. If you don't have a good team, you may be super brilliant, but you can't deliver anything. So that was the biggest challenge I had. And of course, these people would not come cheap. So I had to go and convince our state government, and I was very thankful to the finance department and finance secretary and all that, to actually, they helped create this ecosystem. So I started with a team of 3, slowly raised it to team of 5, 9, 12. Today there are 35 people working in AI, blockchain, on GIS, on satellite imagery, on all these emerging technologies, and creating solutions for public service improvement in Tamil Nadu. And this all is happening under the aegis of Tamil Nadu e-governance. And so this was and if any other state actually wants to replicate, I would strongly advise them to create a core team. You don't have to have a large team, but you need to create a very core team which understands, which can distinguish between the good technology use, bad technology use, needed use, not needed use, right priced use, not right priced used. So in fact, our AI solutions, we started, one of the things we did was for the cataract solution. So Tamil Nadu has a very, very active blindness control society, which all states have. They said that I have enough money to conduct operations on people who are suspected to have developed cataract, but I don't have resources to go out in the field and screen millions of people. Every year in India, about 5 million people lose their eyesight. 2/3 of that is avoidable. That is purely because the cataract was not detected early enough. So we said, okay, can we create a screening solution at scale? And that was the challenge we took. We gave it to our AI team. There is only some 3-4 fellows working on it. They did it completely in-house. There was no cost involved to the government. We didn't pay a single vendor a single penny. We ran this, designed a small app, created this, and started rolling it out in the fields. We trained volunteers. To begin with, we started with health sector workers only, and then it is a simple mobile app anybody can download, and then we give them a 10-minute training saying that this is how you have to take a picture of the eye. The moment you take the picture of the eye, it detects whether there's a cataract or not, and it tells you, you get the whole data. The team goes from the District Blindness Control Society, loads them into a van, brings them to the hospital, conducts an operation. They are very, very quick operation, 15-minute, 20-minute operations, I'm told, very low cost again, and send them back home. And this has been a hit. In fact, recently NASSCOM, I think last week, awarded this, recognized this as a national, one of the national game changer use of AI. And the comment from Devjani Ghosh was that it's fascinating because it's totally scalable. And I think that's very important. Of all the solutions which come to government, they have to be, one of the questions you had asked about, what should be the quality of, what are the qualities of good public policy leaders. And I think particularly in technology, and I think by and large it holds true for all the sectors, is whatever you design has to be inclusive. So you have to make sure that it's not creating a barrier for a certain segment of people in accessing that. 2, it should be scalable. It's very important. And 3, it should be low cost. So these 3 things, and luckily in our case, we have managed all 3. So this was a big hit. We rolled it out in 14 districts, and I think it's getting rolled out in all across other districts as well. So this was a use case for AI which we used, and it has an impact on scale. We came out with other solutions of AI, which we worked on a natural language processing chatbot with help of Anna University and Dr. Shobha Lalita. And she had been working on this for almost, I think, a decade, and she has a fantastic NLP model for Tamil. So we are not using, so my quest was not to use English. So typically what happens is, if you want to provide services on Tamil NLP, you use Tamil sentences, convert them into, do a Google translation or whatever, and convert them into English. Then they do the NLP in English, then they find the result in English, then they do again Google translate to Tamil. So we definitely wanted to avoid that, because it will lead to more number of steps, more errors. Again, it questions on scalability as well. So we actually with the help of Anna University, we developed this whole Tamil native chatbot, which is doing very well, providing service to the citizens. Next step is hopefully our voice chatbot. So that's something which TNEJ will be working on future.